On last week's episode, I shared with you techniques to create perfect body lines in your repair. We pulled and shaped the metal. We used body filler and blocking techniques to create a perfect body line. And then we got it into primer and ready for the next step, which is preparation and paint. Today, I'll guide you through the steps to perfectly prepare and paint your car. Whether you're preparing and painting a couple panels or your entire vehicle, this video is for you. Howdy everyone, Chris here. This channel is dedicated to helping you with your repair or restoration project. And today, we're talking about preparation and painting. The preparation that's done before you paint and clear is the most important step in the whole process. We repaired the damage in this door in the last episode, so this bodywork is nice and straight. And then we apply 2 coats of 2K urethane primer over it. Now what primer does is it's going to help seal that body filler, so when you apply your paint it doesn't soak into that body filler. It also gives you material that you can block flat in case there's any waves, and that's going to give you a nice straight flat surface. Now in order to know whether this panel is straight or not, we've applied a guide coat over it. This is a black powder that shows us any high or low areas as we're blocking this out. The techniques to block sanding your primer is to hold your block flat against the panel, block in an X pattern, moving with the contours of the panel. This is going to allow you to get the panel straight. It's going to remove any texture that remains in the primer, and you can also inspect it looking for any deep scratches or gouges that might need to be repaired. The preparation of these blend panels and what I typically like to use is 600 to 800 grit sandpaper. It's coarse enough that it's going to allow that clear coat to stick properly and adhere properly, and it's not going to peel down the road, but it's also fine enough that it's going to lay down a nice flat finish and not allow you to see scratches through that clear coat. Here I'm using 800 grit sandpaper on a soft foam interface pad. That interface pad allows it to move with the contours of the panel so I don't burn through any sharp edges or body lines. So what I'm doing now is going over that primered area. Now I'm being careful not to dig into that primer. We're just smoothing it out a little bit with some 800 to refine those 320 grit scratches. The quarter panel on this repair is called the blend panel. This is where we're going to blend the color from the door into the quarter panel so we have a good transition in the color of this vehicle. So we need to prep out this panel for paint and clear coat. Choosing the right sandpaper for your blend panel is important. If you go too coarse, you're going to be able to see scratches through the clear coat. And if you go too fine, then your paint and your clear coat is not going to stick properly and you could have peeling down the road. All of this blocking and sanding can be done by hand if you don't have an orbital sander. But we're going to use the palm sander here. We're going to get all the large areas. We're going to stay away from the body lines and the edges. We don't want to burn through that paint with this sander and then have to apply color to those areas later on. In order to get the best results on your project, you want to remove as much trim as possible, whether you're doing a spot panel job or an overall paint job. You can see here we removed the door handle and the weather belt on this door. This allows us to get clear underneath those components, and that means it's going to be less likely to peel down the road. After I've sanded all the large areas with the 800 grit sandpaper and the orbital sander, I'm going to go around by hand and sand all the edges and body lines with an 800 grit soft sponge like this. This allows it to be very easy to sand those hard to reach areas around the door handle there. You want to make sure all that is sanded really well so it promotes adhesion of the clear coat. Once you have all the sanding done, it's very important to clean your project really well. Most of the dust or contaminants that are going to land in your paint and clear coat are going to come from you or the vehicle. The other thing is you want to make sure you blow the vehicle out really well. I pull mine outside before we blow them out. We just had Darius blow this one off. You got to blow in all these cracks and crevices. Anywhere in here, get all the loose dirt blown out of there. Another spot is known for collecting a lot of trash is right in your cowl here. Underneath your hood, a lot of leaves accumulate. It accumulates a lot of trash in there. You need to blow that out really well. All this is going to help you get a really clean paint job. Door jambs, you know, inside the doors. Like, we're going to remove this rubber seal, but you want to make sure that all that's clean in there. All your door jambs are blown out. There's a molding on the roof here. You want to make sure it's blown out real well there. So you kind of get the idea. All those areas are going to hold trash, and you don't want that landing in your paint job. This is what your vehicle should look like after it's properly sanded. A nice dull finish. There should be no shiny areas. Every inch of where you're painting and clearing should be sanded. We've blown it out properly. All the cracks and crevices, we wash it with wax and grease remover. That removes any contaminants that might be on the surface, so you get a nice clean paint job. So once that's done, we're ready to tape this up. Being in an open garage or doing a repair at home in your own garage, I like to wet the floor down before we start masking and painting. So what I'm doing here is we just pulled out the vehicle. Darius was blowing it off and cleaning it out. We wet the floor down and then pushed out the dust. Now, I don't blow off in the garage or blow off the floor in the garage. That's going to stir up dust that may land in your paint job. So we got the floor nice and clean. Now we're prepared and ready to start masking this off. We'll give the vehicle one last wipe down before we start masking with either isopropyl alcohol or wax and grease remover, and then we'll start masking the door jambs first. So we open up the doors, and we're going to do all the masking that we need to do with the doors open first. Here I'm taping down the door seals to the trim, and then we'll use foam masking tape inside the jamb, so when we shut the door, it's going to seal it from any overspray. If you're finding this content helpful, you can help support the channel by liking this video and leaving a comment down below. If you want to see more how-to videos, consider subscribing to the channel. Let's finish up masking this vehicle off. Then we'll talk about the painting process, gun settings, clear coat, and how to spray a flawless looking finish. Now it's time to mix up some paint. The paint we're using today is the Nason XL. This is a pre-mixed paint that I purchased at O'Reilly's. We've got our 3M PPS mixing cup system here. It has the mixing ratios on the top. This paint mixes up 2 to 1. So we're going to add our 2 parts paint. Then we'll add our 1 part reducer. Now it's important to use the proper reducer for the temperature you're spraying in. It's 100 degrees today, so we're going to use a slow reducer. This allows that paint to cure just a little bit slower, gives us a little bit more working time when laying down metallics and that type of thing. I am using the 3M Performance gun to lay down our base coat, and then we'll go ahead and switch over to the Iwata Kiwami 4 to lay down a beautiful looking clear coat. Here I'm using a little bit of air and a tack cloth to wipe down the panels before I start spraying my color. I want to tack off any dust that may have landed on the panels. We don't want to trap those in our paint. There's 3 main settings on this gun. There's the fan pattern, there's the air pressure, and then there's the volume, and that's the amount of fluid that's coming out of the gun. Now for the volume, I'm going to set it at about 3 turns out from closed. This is going to give us plenty of material. We're going to have our fan pattern wide open, and I set it at about 20 psi for the air pressure to spray base. That'll go up a little bit when we spray our clear coat. Now, the first thing we want to do is just to cover the primered areas. Get 1 good coat on it, medium to wet. Allow it to flash off for 10 to 15 minutes. Allow that to dry. It helps the coverage. You don't want to try and cover the primer in 1 coat or multiple coats right after one another. Give it time to flash off, cure, and then come back and apply a second coat. Simple techniques to spraying base is you want to overlap each pass 70%. You put 1 coat on, then you overlap that past 70%. You want to be about 6 inches away from the panel. You want to have a consistent speed when you're spraying and a consistent distance over the entire panel. Now we have our second coat on and it's starting to cover really well. Now I've let this flash off till it was completely dry. I want to wipe over it with my tack cloth. Now, you don't have to wipe it off in between coats. I would suggest that you look it over. If you see any dust or imperfections in your base coat, then you wipe it down. If that does not take care of it, you can actually sand your paint just a little bit with some fine sandpaper like 1,000 grit, 800 grit, and just knock down any dirt that might be trapped in that paint. That's going to give you a cleaner overall finish. If you get dirt trapped in your paint, it's going to show up in your clear coat. So make sure your base is nice and flat and uniform. Now we'll apply our third coat of base, and now I'm going out a little bit farther into that blend panel. So what we're doing is by blending the color, we're creating a good transition from the new paint to the old paint. Because this paint color is black, the blends are not as crucial as they would be if it was a silver or a high metallic gold or something of that nature. Now we're ready for some clear coat, so we're going to break out the Iwata Kiwami 4. Now this is a fantastic gun for a DIYer or a professional. Iwata makes some of the best guns in the industry. This gun is particularly good because it's a budget gun. It's a lower price gun, and you can pick this gun up very reasonably. If you haven't seen the review and demo on that gun, check it out. I'll leave a link at the end. The clear coat we're using today is the Finish 1 FC710 with a slow activator. This is a spot panel clear coat that dries fully in about 2 hours. Check your technical data sheets for all the mixing instructions, but this mixes up 4-to-1. That's 4 parts clear and 1 part activator. This is an inexpensive clear that performs beautifully, cuts and buffs beautifully. If you want to learn more about clear coats, check out my clear coat playlist in the description. My gun settings for this Iwata Kiwami 4 is I have the volume wide open, I have the fan pattern wide open as well, and then we'll set the air pressure at 29 psi. Always check your fan pattern before you start spraying. Here I tested my fan pattern and it was not quite right. So I took the gun apart, took the cap off, and we cleaned the cap really well, and that made a much better fan pattern, more consistent. Those things can really affect how that clear coat lays down. And now you can see I have a beautiful looking fan pattern and we're ready to spray. The first coat of clear, you want to lay down a medium to wet coat. You're just looking to introduce that clear coat to the new surface, get a good base on there so when we apply our second coat, we can really slick it out and make it look beautiful. Now remember your techniques. You want to be about 6 inches away. You want to overlap 70%. You want to be consistent with your speed and your distance from the panel. Don't be anxious or fearful of spraying clear coat. It's not that difficult. You remember your techniques. You spray with those techniques and you'll be fine. If it's not absolutely perfect, there's a lot of things that can be corrected in clear coat after you're done. If you have any questions about spraying techniques or clear coating, leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. When I lay down the second coat of clear, I'm going to slow down just a bit, get a little bit more material on that panel, let it flow out a little bit. That's going to give us that high gloss flat finish that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and finish up the clear coat and we'll take a look at the finished product. I'm really pleased with how this repair turned out. The bodywork looks fantastic and the paint looks nice and flat. Have a few little particles of dust. We'll get that corrected when we cut and buff it. If you want to learn more about paint and body repair, check out one of these videos now. I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time on Garage Noise.